All righty. This is the show for Monday. Normally it would be Monday Morning Minutes, but in all fairness, I had this happen over the weekend or Friday, and I've had to do some editing, which you're going to see here in just a moment. But it kind of takes me back in time. This is a customer service call. There's no denying it. And if you look at some of my earlier videos, I talk about if you're in cancellations, you need to have sales skills just like anybody else does. So what happened was I had a service. I don't want to tell you what the service is, but I was disconnecting it. It was a backup for something, and I just didn't need it anymore. So I called into the company, and anytime I make, if I'm calling to buy a product or I'm calling anywhere, I always record it. And the reason for that is for exactly what we're doing right now. Now, if I forget to tell somebody that I'm recording it, obviously I don't use it in the production. But this one, when you call in, the company tells us, hey, we're recording the call. But before I go into this call, I want to back up because it's only 1 minute and 45 seconds of a call that I edited a little. In other words, I took out the IVR, and then I left off the last 22 minutes of the call because there's so much that can happen in 1 minute and 45 seconds. And you're going to see as we go through this, there's different rules of engagement. There's things that help you improve your scripting. But my lesson came from back in the days when I was a stockbroker. And it was back in the days where you actually picked up the phone and you dialed it. It wasn't a dialer. It didn't do all the automating. So you had to, you had your list and you called through and you tried to talk to the powers that be. And it's so funny. Someone once told me, you never learn from what you do right. You only learn from what you do wrong. And the beautiful thing is, if you're doing it wrong, I don't think anybody does it on purpose, but if you're doing it wrong, you need somebody to tell you to do it right. Now, as you can see by the thing on the board here, it's this call. I called a company that does over $50 billion in revenue a year. They make over $22 billion in profits. Now, keep in mind they have limited competition, so that helps them. And the problem is, if you look back at any company that is so big, they can do things lousy and still succeed. And so in this particular case, that's what you're going to experience. But I want to go back to my story. So here I was a stockbroker. I was young. I was doing these cold calls. I had been raised in the South. I used yes ma'am, no ma'am, all these different things that we were taught as Southern people. You know, it was a subservient term. I didn't know it at the time. I mean, that's just what my parents had always told me. But the nice thing was I had a gentleman, his name was Fred Pitts, and Fred taught me a lot just from telling me what I did wrong. And so many times we as human beings, we get defensive, we push back, we don't believe it, you can't be right. I've been raised this way. This is what I've always known. And the other day I was talking to one of my counterparts, Jim Jacobs, and we were talking about how I've been asking people to send in recordings because what I want to do is take those recordings to help you get better. And the beautiful thing about a recorded call is it's not live. So you can give feedback, you can pause, you can talk about it, you can break it down and truly inspect how you're speaking. Now, are you ever going to be perfect at every call? Absolutely not. That's not the expectation. That's the goal, is to ultimately be the best of the best. I mean, I love it. People ask me, hey, do you golf? Well, I do. And do I swing a club just like Tiger Woods does? I do. But guess what? When he hits the ball, it goes where he wants it to go. Yes, I'm swinging, just like he's swinging by definition, but I'm obviously not doing it right because that ball goes everywhere except for where I want it to go. I mean, people often ask me, said, man, are you a good golfer? And I said, well, I get my money's worth, and I see a lot of the course that a lot of people probably have never seen. But the nice thing is, I know somebody has actually hit the balls out there because when I go to look for mine, I find 3 or 4 more. But back to being a stockbroker. As a Southern man, you were taught to be polite. May I, can I, all these things. That's what we were taught. So I would get on the phone with these people and I would ask, I would go, hey, I'd like to ask you or may I ask you a question? And I was doing it out of being polite. And generally people either say no or yes, and if they said no, what did I do anyway? I kept asking because hey, look, 1 minute, Mr. Customer, I'm trying to be nice, and I don't care if I'm being rude, but you're standing between me and me eating. So sorry, I'm going to go on and continue to ask you questions. Well, the problem is, and thank God, I had a customer one time that ripped me up one end and down the other. And I asked, may I ask you a question? And the gentleman said to me, that is the stupidest bleep, 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 bleep thing I've ever heard. You just did. And then he slammed the phone down on me. Well, guess what? He was right. When you're asking somebody, may I ask you a question? You just ask a question. It may be the only bullet that you get to fire. And if it's a bad bullet, guess what? You missed your target and they're gone. So I'm going to get into, I know you're thinking, so what's the point of the recording behind it if it's actually saving a customer? I want you to understand how it all ties back to sales. Everything ties to sales. Everything focuses on how you speak, the words you use, how you use those words. In other words, tonality definitely has something to do with it. But we need to pay attention to what's going on. Now, I'm going to give you 2 pointers before I get into this call. Those of you who are out there in sales, if you'll get your words right, if you'll get your focus right, take feedback, discount what's bad feedback, but use what's good feedback, you'll get 10 times better. The only way to really get better is try to record yourself. Try to figure out what it is that's going wrong if you're not hitting the targets that other people are hitting. Because they're not anything special. They put their pants on just like you did in the morning. So you need to evaluate. Always look for and ask yourself, not what you did wrong, but what can you do better? Just like what I said a minute ago. If I'm swinging a club, I swing just like Tiger Woods. But I definitely am not as good as Tiger. So I've got to ask myself, what do I need to do to get better? Well, it's the same thing in sales and customer service. So if you're an individual, and you're working for a corporation, and you're going to work for a corporation forever, and you're in sales, that's great. But at some point, you want to move up in your career. So the way you get better is improve the skills that you're using. Get better. Now, you're going to see in just a moment on why I keep saying discard what's bad feedback. So the second part is, and this particular individual's in customer service. The interaction, I am never mean to her, never. And part of it, obviously, I'm being recorded. Obviously, I want to use it. I'm not saying that I'm always mean, but sometimes, after a while, a customer has enough. So when we're going through this, I want you to realize the only part that I edited was the opening. I took out the IVR. No one needs to know all the information that they needed to verify who I was and all that good stuff. And then after that, her intro I cut because she's very pleasant and it's very stereotypical. How may I help you? And boom, there she is. She asked me what I was calling for, but you'll see it as we go through the call. But what I want you to be open to is when we go through this, I'm going to give you some rules of engagement. And I use these rules of engagement to write scripts. I use it to help salespeople get better. Because there's certain things we do by nature that creates problems when we're working with a customer. You're going to have to learn how to be assertive. You're going to have to learn how to do things where it's not obvious what you're doing, but you're accomplishing the goals of both your company and the customer. And if you use, I'm sorry, you're going to see this script, I don't care what company I call, this is exactly what would happen. That's why I don't have the list. I mean, I could list the company name. You're going to hear it in just a moment. They're recording the call. I can do with it as I wish, just like they can do with it as they wish. It's not the point of knocking the company. It's the point of realizing I only had to make one call, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't have to keep calling 12 times. I can call any company in America, and most of the mistakes that are made in this call are made in a ton of them. The sad thing is, this particular company and several others, I've done training with them. I've demonstrated why what these questions that they ask are so poorly written. But guess what? You've got somebody on the 33rd floor. They're geniuses. They've probably never put their butt in that seat when they're interacting with that customer, and they're telling you how to do it. And then you've got people who have been trained. I mean, in all fairness, We're trained like dogs. If you hey, this is how you say it, this is what you do, and you never ask yourself why in the world friction happens between you and the, oh my goodness. So what happened to my camera? Guess what happens when you have a face for radio? Your camera turns off. But hey, back to it. So my whole point there is this. These people that really never do the job have no idea the impact that they have when they write a script. And I've trained people. I have to tell you, someone who's very, very close to me, when I went in and did some training, she actually cried because she realized, I mean, I dumb everything down. I put it in a human form. I have no problem with someone telling me I'm wrong, but you got to role play it. You've got to, as long as you're just not being a butthead, I'm going to roll just like a normal customer, because I watch some of these people, and I'm telling you, I keep telling you to go to YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're the total absurd, ridiculous role play, and you're that customer that you're never ever going to close, you're wasting your time. You're on the fringe. Be a normal customer. Respond like a normal customer. Now, I do want to cue you up. If you change your questions, the conversation's going to change. So you got to pay attention to what's going on. But either way, I had a young lady that, I mean, she honestly cried because she had been in customer service for years. She had been teaching people this for years. And all of a sudden, and keep in mind, I'm open to everything. I open it up. Come at me. I welcome it. Because here's the deal, if you can't see it demonstrated, as hard as you hit, if you can't see it demonstrated, then there's no credibility to what I'm telling you. But I want to show you, let's look at this call because I don't want to take a whole lot more of your time. That's the Sales Talk Tuesday is when I take a longer time. But as you can see here, this call is with a member of the Fortune 50. They have over 22 million customers and they do over $50 billion in revenue, and they do it all wrong. But let's listen to the call. And of course, that's not going to play. When something goes wrong, it goes wrong. Let's see where we are here.
For quality and training purposes, your call may be monitored or recorded.
How may I assist you?
Okay, so it tells me it's recorded. I'm good with that. How may I assist you? Guess what? I'm wanting to cancel service, so that's what I'm going to tell her. I just need to disconnect service.
Alrighty, sir. Well, of course, we do value your loyalty, and we would hate to lose you as a valuable customer. You have reached the right department, and I'll be more than glad to assist. I do see that the account has been fully verified through the IVR.
Now, I want to cover something. Now, realize this is 1 minute and 45 seconds. Everything I'm going to point out, you're allowed to say, hey, he's full of it, whatever. But what I want you to realize, I base everything on real live calls. I base everything on what is said, not what you think is said. And so when we're looking at this, so it's coming in, I've cleared through the IVR. So security's already done. Got it. No problem. How many people get annoyed talking to a machine? Some do, some don't. It didn't really bother me because it was very thorough. It asked the questions, and now I've cleared the IVR. So we're ready to move into it. But here's what I'm wanting you to realize. You saw the part where I said it's a lot of fluff in there. When I start to leave and I'm canceling, the first thing they think is price. So it got in, and you're not going to hear it in the call because that's not important, but I'm just telling you. So at that moment, she wants to drop down and give me a better price so I don't leave. The problem was I had already left, but my point there is we value you as a customer, but we've been putting it to you for a long period of time. Now, there should be some type of algorithm with everybody that's a customer to realize at some point you might want to reach out to that customer, find out if there's a competitor knocking on that door, and proactively lower it and put them in a longer-term contract. There's always a trade-off, ladies and gentlemen. That's how it works. Welcome to the real world. And what happened was their competitor came in. So I just want you to realize that. So let's look at the next one. So before I let her, I'll go ahead and let her say it.
For security purposes.
So for security purposes. Now, this is where I have to tell you, banks do it. Companies do it. You've lost your mind. If you're doing 80, 90 billion dollars a year, You don't have many crooks calling your company. You don't have many crooks that are working with your company, just like credit cards. When you call into them, they go, for security purposes, and why don't they just say, hey, to make sure you're not a crook, I'm going to ask you some questions that only you would know. And if you don't know it, I'm not going to help you. So you're calling, and I've made this point so many times, you're calling 98% or 97% of your customer base crooks. Instead of that 97% who are not crooks, you're calling them that because you're saying, I just want to make sure you're not a crook. Why in the world do you do it? Now, I want to give it to you. You're thinking, well, that's what we're doing. We're checking security. That's so very true. But why call your customer a crook? There's a way to do it. And in all fairness, what her goal is would do that. I mean, that's what the goal is. But we as companies need to try to avoid words that can be just downright offensive. I mean, who cares if you're making a crook mad? Fine, they're gone. But why would you want to make 97% of your customer base mad? That's just crazy. But let's see where she goes with the next part.
Do you mind verifying the service address?
All right, so her question was, do you mind verifying the service address? What if I said yes? Yes, I mind. I'm not going to do it. So now what are you going to do? So 1 minute, just like I said earlier, when I ask somebody, may I ask you a question, I'm thinking I'm being polite. If they answer wrong as if there's an option, now I'm not going to get anywhere if I don't answer the question. So do I really have an option? And that's one of my rules of engagement. If it's not an option, ladies and gentlemen, don't give the customer an option. Your job is to take control. Your job, and I don't mean grab it, I mean just I'm wanting help. I called you. All I want you to do is do what I'm asking you to do. So when you start throwing all these things at me without it being a willingness to move to where I'm wanting to go, that creates an issue. But think about it. Is it really an option? And the answer, you and I both know, is no. It's not an option. If I'm going to get my service disconnected, I've got to answer this question. But let's see how she answers the question. Because the bottom line is this. Words mean things. Say what you mean what you say, and don't blame the customer when you keep doing it wrong. So let's see this example.
No, I don't mind at all. What do you have?
Okay, so her question to me was, can I verify the address? What do you think? I've lived here 17 years. I think I know my address, and I can verify it. So when you're looking at it, what did I say to her? Nope, I have no problem. What do you have? And I'm waiting on her to give me the address so that I can verify it. Now, I know a lot of you that work for these large companies, you're going, well, you know what she means. You're just being mean to her. You're one mean guy. Well, I'm going to say this to you. Damn it, words mean things. Say what you mean what you say. If you want to know my address, in other words, here's how I would ask it, by the way. To make sure your account pulled up, or the right account pulled up, what's your address? Boom. If that address doesn't match, then I'm going to say, I don't have that address. What address do you have the service at? In other words, I'm not saying, hey, I want to make sure you're not a crook. I'm going to hey, I just want to make sure what I'm looking at is what I'm supposed to be looking at. So that's the real question that should be asked right out of the chute. Unfortunately, the IVR has verified who you are, and I'm going to make sure you're not a crook. Can you verify your address? And the answer, you bet, I can. So let's see where she goes.
For security purposes, do you mind verifying the service address?
All right, so let's look at it. Wow, that customer is an idiot. He must not have understood what I said in very plain English. And then in fairness to her, and I want you to realize this, is she reading the script that some genius above her wrote? You bet. And I can tell you right now, some of the people I've worked with in my past are sitting there thinking, come on, man, you're being hard. You shouldn't be so hard on them. They don't mean it. Well, how many customers do you think they talk to every day with this same stupid question? I'm sorry, it is stupid. And if it offends you, I don't really care, because you're offending how many customers calling in each day. So you need to start evaluating how you're interacting with that customer. Because when you're saying these things and you're getting that friction and you really don't know where it comes from, it's what you're saying. And this is what I have found through the years. I don't care if I'm with salespeople or customer service. 95% of the time, the friction that comes is from what we say, not the customer. And what we do is we want to blame them, because remember, we're geniuses. We are the smartest people that landed on this earth. And those people are just not very bright. They don't understand what those words mean. Well, ladies and gentlemen, yes, they do. They just don't have the script. They respond literally to what you say. So say what you mean and mean what you say. So let's see where this goes from here. Now, she has repeated the same thing. What do you think my answer is going to be? Let's see.
Oh, I don't mind at all. I mean, you tell me and I'll verify it.
Shazam! I told her what she should do. If she tells me that address, I'm going to verify it just like she asked me. But what's the hint? She really should be asking me what the address is. So let's see where she goes.
Oh, I don't mind at all. I mean, you tell me and I'll verify it.
I do see that the account has been fully verified through the IVR. For security purposes, do you mind verifying the service address?
Wow, this guy's not only stupid, but he might be deaf. So I'm going to yell at him the same question again, identical. It's on that paper. Those smart people up there with 22 million customers, they know what they're doing. They know how to write that there script. I'm telling you, Bubba, they know. And I'm telling you right now, ladies and gentlemen, Bubba doesn't know crap. And some of these people need to get back on the phone and go out in the field with their salespeople to learn what really happens with that customer when they're rewriting this garbage and they're forcing these people to keep doing it. Now, she's trying to save me, but you see, she's just pounding her head. Okay. And I'm defending her because she's reading the script. It's not her fault. But let me ask you this. Would her supervisor, if she was observing this or he was observing this, say, that guy was just a jerk? He knew exactly what you were asking. He knew what you wanted. And you're right, I did know exactly. But here's my question. 22 million customers, and I would imagine they probably lose millions a year because everybody swaps services. That means 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people, you annoy them by asking the wrong question and blame them for not answering the way you want them to answer, and never once have you even thought or took your ego out of it to think, you know, Bubba, we might be asking the wrong darn question. We might be able to fix this thing. And you know how I know that? Ladies and gentlemen, this call went exactly how it went 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's exactly what I have experienced. I mean, it's so funny. Think of it. You call into a credit card company. May I have your name? Number one, if I give you my name, what in the hell am I going to call me? See, literal. Number two, if I don't give it to you, you're not going to help me. Then they go, may I have the last 4 digits, or for security purposes, may I have the last 4 digits? Why don't you just say, and the last 4 digits? We make it so hard, and we're dictating to the customer. In this particular company, I'm going to be very honest with you. I had great service with them. They really did a nice job. I didn't have any problems with their service. I needed the speed. I didn't need cheap. I needed speed. So when I'm working with them, the bottom line is I don't have a complaint, but they get beaten half to death with their customer service, their quality. And it's not their service. It's how they're being taught to interact with the customer. And I'm going to tell you, I did some training for them on the sales side. And it was so funny because when they're rolling out these scripts that they were rolling out, they allowed the representative to put themselves in it. Well, here's the problem with this, ladies and gentlemen. You're asking people who really don't know what they're doing to correct a script that they don't understand to begin with, because actually the script that they were rolling out had some decent points. It was very, very close to what I would teach. The problem was the organization did not force their representatives to get the information. So I don't want to give too much because I don't want you to know who the company is, because I'm not here to bash the company. I'm not even here to bash the people that are higher up. It's just that at some point, if you're going to be the best of the best, you look at Tiger Woods. He's 3 or 4 years old golfing. And over time, he watched video after video after video after video. He got better and better, tightened up his swings, tightened up his stance, tightened up everything, and became one of the world's best golfers. It's sad what happened to him. He made some mistakes. His game fell off, and now he's back. So you've got all of his competitors who knew what they had to set their goals at. So they got better and better and better. And what I'm saying to you as salespeople and customer service people, if your numbers aren't the best in your office, figure out why. And I'm going to say this to you, I want to warn you. Sometimes the best people in the office do things that you can't get away with. They deliver and they ask questions that you can't get away with. They also have a good lead source that you may not have. But if you go apples to apples, you should be able to beat your competitor. And this is something I want to give the millennials. You've gone through your life so far and competition is a bad thing. Well, let me give you one hint. If you step up to the plate and you do better than the others, yep, they're going to hate you. Yep, they're not going to like you at all. Yep, they're going to try to keep you down. But if you hone your skills to be the best at whatever you want to be, you're going to have one heck of a path that most of us my age did not have. When I grew up, we had competition. People were trying to kick your butt. It wasn't in a mean way. They were just trying to be better. We had boards where our numbers were up on the board. You knew how much money you were making. You knew how much your buddy was making. You knew how many calls. You knew the closing rate. You knew everything. Know your numbers. At the same time, if I've got a 20% close rate and someone else has got a 30% close rate, but I'm making more money, that means I'm doing what? I'm closing better customers with a higher margin. So it can vary. So when you're looking at somebody, you need to figure out exactly what you need to do to get better. Here's another note. If your marketing's bringing in the wrong people, you got to be conscientious. Don't blame marketing. Do all you can with those customers so that you ultimately have something. When you turn back to somebody like me and you go, hey, Byron, the marketing is terrible. Okay, let's listen to calls. And when I listen to calls, I realize that you're cherry picking. I realize you're not asking the right questions. I realize you're talking to the customer like they're idiots. Guess what? It isn't the marketing, it's you. And so you've always got to be able to accept where you make mistakes. Now, this particular young lady, here's what I would say to her if I was coaching her as an outsider, because an insider would be tough. But as an outsider, she needs to trial some things. And if she would learn from this call, just like what I said a minute ago, instead of, can you verify your address, just go, hey, to make sure I've got the right account up, what's the address where the service is? Boom. Good, tight question. Customer gives you the address. You know you've got the right one. And now you want to find out why they're leaving. What made you leave? Blah, 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 blah. What makes you want to disconnect the service? And she got into all that. It wasn't that great either, but I'm wanting you to realize in this next part. So here we go. So twice she has asked me to verify. Let's look at where we are. Sorry, I got a little long on that.
I've said no 3 times. I don't mind at all. How else am I going to verify it if you don't tell me what it is? Then I verify it. If you want to know the address, I have no problem giving it to you.
So now, have I laid it out? So you've got to listen when you're interacting with that customer. I've told her, hey, I'll answer your questions. Don't have a problem. Just tell me it and I'll give it to you. Or you can ask me what the address is. She didn't listen to a word I said. So let's see what happens right here.
Do you want to know the address?
That is correct. The account has been fully authenticated and verified through the IVR.
Hey.
All right. So she pulls out a word, and this is what I would call a word to avoid. Like I said. Is she now being condescending to me? The answer is yes. And could I come up underneath her chin and pop pretty hard? You bet. I could wear her out. It's not the goal. In all fairness, I just wanted you to hear it because I knew sooner or later it was going to get to this. When you keep repeating the same thing and the customer's not understanding it, at some point you got to ask yourself, what is wrong with my question? And ladies and gentlemen, you will find the answer. What is wrong with my question? Look at the words that you're saying and say, what does it mean? And fix the question. And so that's another rule of engagement. If you're thinking to yourself, Come on, man. You know what I mean. That means you need to fix your question, because whatever you're saying, it's wrong. And so you've got to fix it. Quit blaming the customer for you saying it wrong. It's your fault. And here's the sad thing. You're going to hang up that phone, and that customer's going to go on about his merry way. You're going to blame that customer and do it to the next guy. You won't even realize that it's happening to you because the customer's going to give. So think of that. It's a bloody bad experience. I don't even want to call. So think of it. If I'm calling to cancel, do I expect them to try to save me? Sure I do. So I'm already prepared for bad blood. And then you talk to me like I'm an idiot. And if you can't understand, then you're just going to scream at me louder the same darn question. Now at this point, I fully explained to her, if you want to know my address, I'll tell you. Just ask me. I told her that. And here she's going to go right back to the same old script. And then we're going to end the call.
Ma'am, please. I mean, just like you, everything we're doing, talking is recorded. So you asked me to verify it, and I have no problem verifying it. But to verify it, you said I verified it. If you want to know what the address is, I can tell you that too. So you just ask, what's the address?
Ma'am,
I didn't know I was a ma'am, but I'm okay with that. And I would, again, let that slide. Let's go to the next one.
That's what I'm asking. I said the account has been fully verified through the IVR, but for security purposes and to make sure that the correct account populated.
So you heard her right there. To make sure the correct account populated. That is what should happen. Think of it. If she would take that and go, hey, to make sure that the correct account populated, what's the address where we're disconnecting service? Boom. Lights out, party's over. You got the account. Now, give me a moment. Let me pull that up. And you're doing that to buy time so that you can start asking questions to find out why I'm leaving. Is there a chance for you to save this customer? That's really what you're wanting to do. And I respect that. You're trying to save your revenue. It's what a company should do. But when you're popping the customer and popping them and popping them and popping them, and you can't understand why they're not, your save rate sucks, guess why? You're treating them like, well, what they say you're treating them like.
Do you mind verifying the service address?
And I said, I don't mind verifying it at all.
Okay. So you can go ahead and verify the address?
So think of it. I've explained it 3 times. I've talked with her. And she comes right back to the same thing. And ultimately, she did it 2 or 3 more times. And ultimately, I disconnected because I already had the replacement service in my office and stuff. So either way, long story short, what I'm wanting you to realize out of this session is when we go forward, if you have recordings and you want live feedback, and just like this one, I won't leave your name in there. I won't leave the company. That's not the reason why I'll do these programs. I want you to learn how to improve your own skills so that you can become the person you want to be. And I've had some emails where people are like, I don't want to be a salesperson the rest of my life. Fine. That's okay. I welcome that. You want to move up. You want to do different things. You want to manage a team. But think about it. If you're a manager and you can't identify the things that can help your representatives, what good are you? This woman right here probably has another, a woman or a man above her that I could sit down and have a conversation with, and they wouldn't get it either. They would go right back to the old way because this is how we've done it. And the problem is, if they really had a competitor, they would eat their lunch. And that's what I'm saying to you as a salesperson. If you focus on the customer and try your best to help them, you're going to win the business. Yep, they may pay a premium for you. I don't mind charging a premium. I love it when someone says you're a lot more expensive than my competitor, and I don't mind looking them right dead in the eye, and that's because I'm better than my competitor. I can prove it. I can get on the phone. I can take calls. I can go in the field and take calls. I can look at what's going on, and I'm telling you, some of the best are out there on YouTube, and I can tell you right now, they need some help. They're good. They're very good, but boy, are there some room for improvement. With that said, I love giving these videos. You'll see the subscribe button. Please subscribe. Hit the bell so you get a notification. If you're on Facebook, please like or anything. But a lot of people are asking me why I'm doing these, and it's very simple. I want to help as many salespeople as possible become better. I want to help companies grow their top of the line and the bottom line. That's really my goal. I simply can, it's so funny when I go into an organization, yes, I have a sales process. Everybody does. But I don't force a company into my sales process. I look at what's going on. I figure out who their target customer is. I figure out what their marketing is doing to cause friction or not friction. And then I craft the words around it so that we can get the customer comfortable. I don't want to ever, and nor will I ever, teach somebody to manipulate a customer and put them in a bad situation. I want you to do the best by the customer. If they're not your customer, move on. Don't waste your time. If they can't afford your product, move on. Don't waste your time. If there's somebody that could benefit from your product and they just don't see the value, that's your job to translate it. In the end, I want you to help your customer become better at what they do. And the only way you can do that is by being better at what you do so they see the value that you bring and you can help them reach the goals that they want to reach. Now, I do want to prepare you. If you ever call in or you ever bring in something and you do a role play with me, it will be painful. Ladies and gentlemen, my mother told me not to touch an iron. I touched that iron several times when it was cold. But when I touched it one time, I learned, ouch, that hurt. Same thing when you're getting feedback. And Jim was so right. He's like, Byron, who in the hell wants somebody to pound every word they say? I just took a minute and 45-second call, sliced it 13 times, pointing out the things that she did wrong. Was it her fault? No, that's what the script is. So my goal is to help you. And as we go through this, any feedback you have, some areas you want me to focus on, I'll focus on it. But please subscribe and like the video if you like the video. If you have feedback, I welcome the feedback. I really do. I do everything I can. And the one thing everybody always says, you're too long-winded. And you may be right. But if I have to reach out there for that extra person, I'm going to do it. I wish you guys the best. I'll see you tomorrow for Sales Talk Tuesday at 9 a.m. Don't know what I'm going to be talking about. I'll decide tonight. We'll see what happens tomorrow. It's been a pleasure. I hope you had a great Monday. I hope you've got some good goals set for the rest of the week, and I hope you reach them plus 25%. We'll see you.